Andrew, can you step into my office for a moment? Just those 6 words, and I knew everything was about to end. And not the kind of ending with bright lights or a farewell party with cake and apple juice. No, this was the kind that sends a chill down your spine, even when it's blazing hot in August. I stood up from my desk like a machine, my legs heavy as if someone had strapped rocks to my shoes. My office was on the 6th floor of North Bay Systems, a mid-sized software company in Seattle, where I had spent nearly all of my adult life. 17 years. Nearly 2 decades of dedication without a single complaint. And now, I was walking into the boss's office like someone being summoned to an execution. The room felt colder than usual. The ceiling light beamed straight into my face. Kyle, the newly appointed CEO of nearly 2 years, sat upright behind the desk, his fingers interlaced like he was about to deliver a speech. I hadn't even had a chance to sit down when I saw Angela, the head of HR, sitting quietly at the corner of the table. My throat dried up. They didn't need to say anything. I already knew where I stood and why. Kyle spoke, his tone as empty as a morning news report. Andrew, the company has decided to eliminate several senior positions as part of a technical department restructuring. Your role will be terminated effective immediately. A gut punch out of nowhere. No performance review. No warning signs. No complaints in 17 years. I stood still, as if all the noise in my head had been shut off. Only the slow, cold rhythm of my heartbeat remained. I understand, I said, calm, almost eerily so. I didn't slam the desk, didn't protest, didn't cry. I simply nodded. Because I knew, from the way Kyle avoided eye contact and how Angela pursed her lips like she was afraid of making a sound, this wasn't just restructuring. So, this was a purge, and I was just one of the people who had to disappear to make room for something or someone new. I walked out of the office into the sea of confused glances from younger coworkers. They avoided eye contact like I was contagious. Some of them I had trained, line by line of code, emergency procedures, now all forgotten. This used to be my space. The servers were its heartbeat, the code its blood. Now it all felt foreign. I returned to my desk. No one said a word. I picked up the old photo frame from our 10th anniversary party with my wife, the chipped ceramic mug I used every morning, and the technical notebook I never let out of sight. I placed them gently into a cardboard box, slow but steady. I heard footsteps behind me. It was Claire, a young software tester from my team. Her face tightened awkwardly. Andrew, this is so unfair. I smiled faintly. Fairness is a luxury around here, Claire. I wasn't naive. I had seen 3 CEOs come and go. I'd stood at the sidelines of decisions that forced dozens of employees out. But I never imagined I'd be one of them, not like this. As I walked toward the exit, Kyle stood leaning against the door frame, arms crossed like he was guarding against me walking out with a USB drive. No handshake. No thank you. Just a distant look, like I had never existed in the company's records. What they didn't know, or had forgotten, was that I wasn't some disposable employee stuck repeating old tasks. I was the one who built most of the internal network, who wrote the original content management software, the only person who knew how to restore the backups no one else touched. Yeah. I wasn't a genius, I was just meticulous. And that very meticulousness would make what came next impossible to ignore. I walked out of the building at 10:47 a.m., personal box in hand, keycard deactivated right at the revolving door. I turned around and looked back at the company I had given nearly half my life to. A soft breeze brushed the back of my collar, carrying the chill of closure. But I didn't feel like I had been fired. I felt like I had been freed. And the funny thing was, I'd been waiting for this moment longer than I'd realized. I got home just before noon. The cardboard box sat silently in the back seat, a small stain of 17 years suddenly erased. Andrea, my wife, opened the door before I could ring the bell. She didn't say anything, just looked at me with an expression that needed no words. I set the box on the floor, took off my jacket, and collapsed onto the couch. They misfired you? Yeah. For what reason? Restructuring. Andrea pressed her lips together, gripping the dish towel in her hands. She didn't need to hear more to understand what had really happened. I looked out the window, tapping my fingers on my thigh. The sun was still shining like nothing had happened, but inside me, something had broken. Or rather, something had awakened. I wasn't just another IT engineer. For 17 years, I hadn't just done my job. I had lived inside that system. I was the one who transitioned North Bay from a clunky local network to a full cloud infrastructure. I had written access protocols, redesigned the security algorithm, and created dozens of emergency scripts only I knew how to run. In the tech department, there was an unspoken rule. If something couldn't be solved, find Andrew. If the system crashed, call Andrew. If data vanished, ask Andrew. And now they thought they could replace me with a spreadsheet and a few modern strategies? They just woke the wrong dragon. In the garage, buried among old equipment boxes, I found a wooden lockbox. Inside were personal backups I had kept. Not because I didn't trust the company, but because I had been asked to, by legal, when we had a data leak scandal 6 years ago. Back then, they feared there was a mole. I had been tasked with building a covert monitoring system, an invisible behavior log, accessible only by me. They had forgotten about that, but I hadn't. The external hard drive emerged from the dusty cloth, wrapped like a relic. I plugged it into my personal laptop. A soft chime. The drive mounted. Within seconds, hundreds of folders appeared. System access logs, admin logs, hidden account lists, even a hand-drawn map of the internal network I'd drafted step by step. I wasn't doing this to sabotage. That's not who I am. But I wanted them to know, loud and clear, that the man they pushed out was the one holding every single artery, keeping that system breathing. I opened a private folder labeled Failsafes. Inside were configuration backups of the database management system, along with a text file documenting every change in access permissions by timestamp, IP address, and device, all encrypted with 2-layer security. And I noticed something strange. Almost 3 months ago, my system administrator privileges had been quietly limited, not revoked, just adjusted in a sly, calculated way. Level 2 admin permissions had been reassigned to a new account named TechResLead_JP. I had never heard of that account before. I opened another log and froze. That account had been created on the same server I used, but it logged in from an IP address tied to a VPN outside the United States. A ghost account. A new backdoor, set up by someone who knew the system inside out, but it wasn't me. Suddenly, a chill ran down my spine. Someone was operating something behind the scenes, and they needed me gone so I wouldn't find out. Andrea walked into the room, holding a cup of coffee. Asked a big boy, "What are you doing?" "Just reviewing some old files," I replied hesitantly. "You know, you're never going to rest today, at least today." I looked at my wife, then back at the screen. I had been quiet, loyal, and patient for too long. I might not have a seat in the boardroom anymore, but what I knew, what I had built, still remained. No, I think it's time to act. That night, I sat alone in my old basement office. The old laptop cast a soft blue glow. I started writing a list. Not a hit list, but a list of vulnerabilities, weak spots in the system, places that could be exploited if someone wanted to launder money or fabricate transaction flows. And I knew those holes well, because I had once been tasked with patching them, but was never granted full authority to do so. They thought I was old, they thought I wasn't modern anymore. They were wrong. I hit enter, and a command line scrolled down like the flow of time. I was coming back. Not for justice, but to make this clear. The system they controlled still bore my fingerprint. And when it collapses, only one person will be able to save it. The same one they pushed out the door with a cardboard box and no goodbye. I used to think I'd seen every trick in the book in this industry, but when I casually flipped through an old log of the internal accounting system I had backed up last month, something was off. It started with a small number, a recurring payment of $4,950 made on the 15th of every month to an entity called Stonebridge Consulting, LLC. The name sounded legitimate, like a typical subcontractor, but I had never heard it mentioned in finance meetings, and there was no record of it in the official vendor management system. At first, I almost skipped over it, but then I realized it wasn't a one-time payment. It showed up consistently, almost too consistently, for the past 8 months, increasing steadily each quarter. I opened 3 more backup copies, cross-checking the data. Not just one, but 12 transactions totaling over $680,000. All originated from a finance department account, approved by one individual, Harold Skinner, Chief Financial Officer of North Bay Systems. Harold. The guy always in a gray suit and purple tie, constantly quoting ROI charts and budget reports like scripture. I had always thought he seemed too clean. Now I knew why. I typed Stonebridge Consulting, LLC into a business registration lookup. The results appeared within seconds and sent a cold wave down my back. The company's listed address wasn't a corporate office or a tech hub, but a mailbox at a UPS store in Spokane, Washington. No website, no phone number, no images. No one listed as owner except for one name, Marlene Skinner. My palms started to sweat as I pounded the keyboard. Marlene was Harold's sister-in-law. I knew because I had met her at an internal event 3 years ago. She came with Harold and introduced herself as family. I leaned back in my chair, exhaling hard. A shell company. A string of transactions disguised as consulting services. A financial scheme so well hidden that only someone deeply familiar with the system could uncover it. I didn't shout. I didn't slam the table. I opened another folder, Buried Roots, where I kept internal audit templates, mirrored access logs, and an admin account I had created solely for monitoring anomalies. And there I found what I feared most. Harold had requested Level 3 access, the kind that allows payment approvals without the comptroller's sign-off. During the same week, I was removed from all technical projects. He was clearing the path, and I had been the final obstacle. I began backing up every file, wire transfer documents, screenshots of transactions, access log trails, and the network route maps tied to those financial reports. I labeled every item, encrypting the data with the AES-based system I had personally designed during the 2015 data loss incident. No one in the current infrastructure could break that encryption, except me. At 2 o'clock in the morning, Andrea came downstairs. She didn't ask anything, just placed her hand gently on my shoulder. I woke up. I think I just found out why they got rid of me. She was silent for a moment, then asked, "Is it serious?" I turned to look her in the eyes. My voice was firm, without hesitation. It's federal financial fraud if proven, and I have enough data to bring their entire system to the ground. The next day, I drove to a cafe 3 blocks from home. There, I opened my laptop in safe mode and logged in using a security test account I had created years ago for simulating internal breaches. This account wasn't in the official HR database, and I had never used it until today. I sent the first email, anonymously to Harold Skinner. Subject line: Stonebridge Consulting Transaction Review. The message: just a few short lines, along with a screenshot showing part of the payment history, linked to Marlene Skinner. No threats, no declarations. Just a vague suggestion that someone had seen it. 2 hours later, my phone rang from an unknown number. I didn't answer. 5 minutes later, a text message appeared. "We need to talk, privately, not over email." I smiled. The net had touched the fish, and I had only dipped a fingertip into the water. But I wasn't in a hurry. I had waited 17 years to build a system no one knew better than I did. Now I could use it to expose those who thought they were smarter. And this was only the beginning. I'm not the impulsive type. Anger may be explosive, but information, that's the match. And I had a whole fuel tank in my hands. I wasn't planning to file a formal complaint, nor did I want to knock on the FBI's door just yet. Not because I was afraid, but because I understood. If you want to bring down someone powerful, don't let them know they're being watched. Let them believe they're still in control. Until the floor disappears beneath them, I needed to know more, to confirm my suspicions, and most importantly, to find out who else in the company was involved. That night, I sat at my desk, the pale blue screen reflecting in my glasses. I reopened the anonymous account I had created when setting up the security test environment, a simulated internal address, audit.alerts at northbaysystems.team, configured to look like a system address, but not listed in the user management system. Only I knew it existed. I wrote a simple, concise email that carried weight. Subject: Review Request. Irregular recurring payment. To Harold Skinner, CFO. DC Alan Dorsey, Head of Internal Audit. BCC, no one. O content. Account number 3129-C has been transferring monthly payments to Stonebridge Consulting LLC, a vendor with no formal contract in the official supplier management system. Total transaction value to date, $683,200. Urgent review requested. No sender name, no signature, just a system notification like a glitch. But I knew, if they saw it, they wouldn't take it lightly. I hit send at 9:47 p.m. Then I waited. 15 minutes passed. Nothing. At 10:12, my phone buzzed. An unknown number, New York area code. No one outside the company called me at this hour. I let it ring out, then declined it. Right after, another email landed in my personal inbox. From Stephen Ford, a young tech staffer I had once mentored. The subject line read, "What the hell is going on?" Tangent. Andrew, tonight an internal audit Stipe alert email hit finance and Alan, my boss, is losing his mind. He just called an emergency meeting around 10 p.m. I've never seen anything like this. What's going on? I didn't reply. I just texted him one sentence. I'll get involved, just observe. The next morning I woke up early. Andrea handed me a hot cup of coffee without saying a word. She knew I was planning something, and she trusted me. I opened my laptop and logged into one of the company's backup servers, the one I had configured last year during a temporary project. No one used it anymore. And most importantly, it hadn't been disabled. I accessed the log system and filtered for access entries from finance and audit after 10 p.m. the night before. Alan had logged in at 10:16 and stayed until 1 a.m. I smiled. The bait had been taken. That afternoon, I sent a second email. Though this time, directly to Kyle, the CEO who had fired me, without a single word of thanks. Subject: Recommended review of internal payment system, high potential risk. To Kyle Tressman, CEO. DCC, Vanessa Reed, Chief Legal Officer. Intent. A series of unusual transactions are occurring within the financial system. Suspected abuse of elevated access privileges to authorize unmonitored fund transfers. Significant legal risk if uncovered by external audit. Details will be provided upon receiving a secure response. I didn't sign it. Left no trace. But it was enough to spark a small fire in their minds. And sure enough, at 4:12 p.m., Vanessa Reed called. I didn't answer. 1 minute later, a message popped into my inbox. Order issued to revoke all remaining access privileges of former employee Andrew Coleman. Just as I predicted, they were panicking. And when a system panics, it reveals things no one usually touches. That night, I sat on the balcony, a glass of bourbon in hand. The lights of Seattle shimmered in the distance, reflected in my drink. Andrea sat beside me, resting her head on my shoulder. How's everything going? I smiled softly. Right on track, and tomorrow's the next step. Are you scared? I shook my head. They should be the ones afraid. Me? I'm just shining a flashlight into a dark corner. Tomorrow was Friday, the day of the quarterly financial board meeting. The day numbers were read aloud behind closed doors. The day when, if a report were to accidentally show up at the right moment, no one could pretend they didn't know. And I had that report ready. Every line. Every piece of evidence. Of every flowchart. Not for blackmail, but to reset the order. To drag the manipulators into the light. Tomorrow, I didn't need to step foot inside North Bay Systems. All it would take was a single click, and their entire system would shake. I thought the Stonebridge consulting issue was at the center of everything. But it turns out that was just the tip of a black, shadowy, and icy iceberg. On Friday morning, while the entire company was preparing for the quarterly financial meeting, I sat in my usual cafe, laptop open, my hand lightly gliding over the automatic query chain I had set up last year, a query that only triggered when it detected transactions matching timestamps, IP addresses, or hidden character strings in recipient account codes. Less than 5 minutes later, the results took my breath away. 3 other companies, all paid from North Bay's internal account. The total amount exceeded $3 million. The first company's name, Everlane Business Partners. The name sounded like a strategic investment firm, but in reality, it was registered at an old pizza shop in New Jersey that has since closed down. The legal representative's name? Darlene Skinner, Harold's cousin. I checked Facebook, LinkedIn, even business tax records. Everything confirmed she had never run any organization except a pet shop 8 years ago. The second company, Summit Analytics Group. Quarterly transfers averaging $145,000. Payment descriptions listed. System performance analysis services, but I had never seen any analysis reports stored in the internal shared system. I looked up their registration records. The owner was Dean Keller, and that name stopped me cold. Dean Keller used to be an executive assistant to Daniel Reese, the current CEO. Daniel was the one who had pushed me out of the company without a word of thanks, as if I were just a retired security guard. Now I knew why. Dean left the company 4 years ago, quietly. A year later, Summit was born. I dug deeper. There was still one more company, Brightline Synergies, Inc. This name was slippery, vague, leaving no trace except for a few invoices listed under employee transition training costs. But the list of participants in those training sessions was completely blank. The legal representative was Melissa F. Reese, Daniel's wife, a single hand covering the sky. And he had done it very cleverly, splitting the funds, moving them through different names, labeling them as legal services to pass basic audit checks. They thought they had sealed every loophole, but they forgot one thing. I was the one who designed the system to detect unusual recurring transactions, and no matter how smart they were, they couldn't outsmart the links embedded deep within the foundation of the system I built. I opened the black layer folder, the one that stored real-time access logs for high-level admin accounts. The first line made my blood run cold. Daniel Reese, Level 4 access, requested a change to the input cost auditing process. Execution date, 1 week before I was fired. No need to say more. He knew I was about to uncover the mess, and he needed to remove me from the chessboard. I began piecing things together. Harold Skinner created ghost companies using family members' names. Daniel was complicit by concealing documents, altering the budget structure, and staging staff productions as part of a strategic restructuring plan. Not only that, I also discovered Daniel's account had approved a special internal bonus of $350,000 for himself, under the guise of a digital transformation project bonus that never actually existed. I sat there, typing line by line, my heart pounding, not out of fear, but because adrenaline was coursing through me like an undercurrent. I had everything in my hands. Transfer documents, proof of family connections, system change logs, hidden access history. I compressed everything into a .zip file, triple encrypted, and named the file Obsidian_report_alpha. I knew the game wasn't over, but I had moved ahead of them by several moves. As the evening began to darken, Andrea walked into the room, holding the phone. Guy, named Kyle Tressman, just called. He left a message, wants to talk urgently. His voice sounded shaky. I left. Finally, he's feeling the pressure. I stood up, stretching my shoulders. It's time to bring the truth to light. No threats, no shouting. Just let them see the whole picture they've been trying to hide beneath the thin ice. Andrea took my hand. Are you sure? Sure. This time, they won't be able to keep up. I knew when the opponent is the entire executive board of a multi-million-dollar tech company, you can't just throw random shots into the void. You need a precise shot. A silver bullet. And someone powerful enough not to be silenced after hearing the blast. That person for me was Richard Alden, a senior member of North Bay Systems Board. He used to be the Chief Information Security Officer before retiring and taking on a strategic advisor role. A smart, quiet man who didn't play politics. And most importantly, I owed him a thank you from 10 years ago. When I was a mid-level engineer, Richard pulled me off the layoff list during the 2013 restructuring, simply because, as he said, "You're the only one here who understands why the system still runs smoothly every day." I picked up my phone and found his old number. I hadn't called in years, but it was still saved. I took a deep breath and dialed. The ringing stretched. Then a deep, slightly aged voice answered, firm but clear. "Andrew, it's been a long time. Wait 15 minutes, not about asking for a job back. This is serious." Serious how? Over $5 million has been funneled outside the company system through shell companies. The CFO and CEO are both named in the files. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then Richard said, "Meet me at Jefferson Park in 1 hour. Don't be late." I printed the report. Not via email, not saved in the cloud. Everything was copied onto an encrypted USB drive and a paper copy with each page numbered. When I arrived, Richard was already sitting on a bench beneath a large oak tree, in a dark gray coat, his eyes sharp as surgical knives. I sat down, not saying a word. I handed him the envelope. He pulled out the documents, flipping through the first few pages. On page 6, he paused. "Melissa Reese, Daniel's wife?" I nodded. A shell company under her name. Over $800,000 received in the last 2 years for internal training services that never existed. He continued reading, this time slower. Dean Keller, Daniel's former assistant, so his whole team's involved. I took a breath. I'm not looking for forgiveness, nor do I want my old position back. I just want these destroyers to be brought into the light. Do you have copies? 5 copies, stored in different locations. If anything happens to me or my family, the data will be sent to the SEC, the IRS, and 3 major news agencies. Richard smirked. You've always been meticulous. Good, very good. He slipped the USB into the inside pocket of his coat, folded the documents as if he were holding a weapon of war. Coincidentally, tomorrow morning there's a special board meeting to approve the Q2 bonus budget. Ideal for dropping the bomb. I don't need to show up, just make sure the documents are on the table. It will be there. Right on time. I stood up. The wind rustled through the trees, making the leaves whisper. It was about to rain, but in my heart, the sky had already cleared. Thank you, Richard. No need to thank me, just make sure of one thing, Andrew. Yes? When those bastards fall, don't bow your head as you walk past. Hold it high. Because you're the reason this company is still standing. I left the park without looking back. I knew from the moment Richard held the envelope, the tide had turned. The next morning, I woke up at 6:30. Andrea had prepared coffee. I didn't say anything. I just sat outside on the porch, the steaming cup of coffee in my hands, watching the sun rise behind the rooftops. 8 o'clock in the morning, I turned on my phone, no calls, no texts. I just sat and waited. So 8:17, the first call came from an unknown number. I didn't answer. 8:23, more calls, back to back. One of them was from the company's management office. 9:05, Stephen texted. What are you doing? The office is in chaos. Daniel just got pulled into a private meeting. Harold's pale as a ghost. Vanessa, from legal, called the police. I placed the phone down on the table, poured myself more coffee. By 10:12, another message from Richard. Only 4 words. You've fallen into the trap. That afternoon, an internal memo was released, but was leaked to a local news outlet less than an hour later. North Bay Systems launches internal investigation after signs of financial fraud are discovered. Several senior leaders have been temporarily suspended pending investigation. No names mentioned, but I knew who they were. Daniel, the one who watched me walk out of the company with a look of disdain. Harold, the one who thought he could hide everything beneath a pile of budget papers. And Melissa, the one behind the curtain, thinking her last name was enough to cover all traces. Not anymore. I used to be the one no one noticed, a familiar back, a name that never appeared at the executive meetings. Now they would have to remember me, not out of hatred, but for justice. Monday, 7:42 a.m. I sat in the familiar kitchen, my hands wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee, my eyes on the phone screen, which had rung 6 times in the last 10 minutes. The calls were all from North Bay Systems' internal system. Andrea glanced at me from across the dining table. They're starting to panic, aren't they? I nodded slightly, not needing to say anything more. 9 o'clock in the morning. North Bay Systems Board opened its second emergency meeting in 3 days. I wasn't there. But Richard kept me updated via texts. 9:27 a.m. Message from Richard. Harold officially admits responsibility. Negotiating with lawyers for a lighter sentence. Daniel denies everything. The board doesn't believe him. 9:45 a.m. Vanessa just confirmed the contracts with the company under Melissa's name didn't have legal approval. It's clearly fraud. 10:03 a.m. Daniel has been temporarily suspended. The board is requesting to lock down access for all former executive members. I put the phone down on the table, stood up, and stepped out onto the porch. The March wind was cold, but not biting. Everything was unfolding just as I had planned. North Bay no longer had leadership, and they needed someone to rebuild. At 11:22 a.m., a call came through from the board's direct number. I picked up. The voice on the other end was that of Margaret Fields, a longtime board member and the person who had signed off on Daniel's promotion 3 years ago. Mr. Coleman, thank you for picking up. I'm listening, Ms. Fields. The board met privately this morning based on the information you provided as well as confirmation from the auditing agencies. We are proceeding with internal action against the senior leadership. And she paused for a moment. I could hear a sigh through the phone. Oh, we would like to invite you back to North Bay. Not to your old position, but to an entirely new role. I didn't say anything. She continued. Chief Information Security Officer, you will report directly to the board, bypassing the executive team. You will have full authority to audit, oversee, and make decisions on all system changes, including technology budgets, software contracts, and internal security. I leaned back in my chair. I closed my eyes for a moment. I need to see the specific terms. Of course. A proposal document will be sent this afternoon. But to be clear, you can make any requests you have. We are open to negotiations. I spoke immediately, without hesitation. I want veto power over the technology budget, access to all internal security records including past data. I want my own team, free from interference from HR, and I want any decision to change the system's structure to go through me for approval or at least have my signature of consent. Silence lingered for a few seconds on the other end of the line, then she replied without hesitation. We will approve everything, and Andrew, the board has full trust in you. That afternoon, I walked through the glass doors of North Bay Systems for the first time in nearly a month. The new security guard, who had never seen me before, was flustered when he saw my name on the invitation and verification code. He nodded repeatedly. Sorry, Mr. Coleman, it's just, we didn't know you were coming back. I just smiled. Don't worry, I didn't think I'd be coming back either, but perhaps the company needs me more than I need it. The elevator took me up to the 10th floor, the one that used to be reserved for the senior executive team. The floor I hadn't been allowed to step on during my 17 years with the company. The elevator doors opened. Margaret was standing there, holding a thick file. Welcome back, Andrew. I shook her hand. The handshake was firm, no pleasantries. This wasn't a typical welcome. This was the signal of a real power transfer. Inside the conference room, 10 board members sat around the table. Richard sat at the head of the table, nodding at me as I entered. No one spoke for the first 10 seconds. It wasn't necessary. They all knew who I was and what I had done. Finally, Margaret spoke. To approve the proposal to establish the Chief Information Security Officer position, and all of you agree to appoint Mr. Andrew Coleman with full authority as requested, including budget control, oversight, and independent authority over all technology contracts. I nodded. I accept, but with one additional condition. I will not work to protect this company unless I'm allowed to fully restructure it. Richard smiled for the first time throughout the meeting. That's exactly why we need you. When I left the meeting, the late afternoon sun streamed through the glass doors, casting reflections on the shiny floor. Stephen was waiting outside, the young engineer I had mentored. His eyes widened when he saw me. You came back? I patted his shoulder. Not just back. This time, I'm leading the way. 2 weeks after officially taking the role of Chief Information Security Officer, I stood alone in my new office on the 13th floor, the highest floor of North Bay Systems. The afternoon light streamed through the UV-protected glass, casting shadows on my tidy desk with 2 large monitors and the black fountain pen I had kept since the start of my career. I had walked through hell and returned as the survivor, but not to seek revenge, but to restore order. In the first week, I ordered a comprehensive audit of all technology contracts from the last 5 years. 17 vendors were suspended, 4 systems were severed from the internal network due to serious security risks. I didn't ask for permission, I gave orders, and everyone understood the era of complacency was over. There were no more friendly CEOs pretending to be knowledgeable and approving things without question. No more backdoor handshakes, no more consulting fees going to shell companies. From now on, every line of code, every bid, every transaction would be thoroughly checked using the very tools I designed, and which the old leadership had ignored. Stephen, the young engineer I once mentored, now the head of system coordination, reported directly to me. I don't think I'm experienced enough to lead this team. He hesitated during our first meeting. I just said, one thing, you have a clean mindset. As for experience, I'll help you build it. The most important thing right now is you don't sell yourself. Stephen stayed silent, but his eyes lit up, and I knew I had placed the right person in the right position. Within 1 month, I established a new unit, the Independent Internal Risk Monitoring Division, with its own budget and direct access to all the company's data systems. No one, not even board members, was allowed to interfere with the unit's operations. I hired people who had never worked for North Bay. Engineers from competing companies, security analysts from nonprofit organizations. People who weren't influenced by the old culture. I spoke plainly in the launch meeting. You're not here to please me, you're here to do what's right. If I go off track, I want you to be the first ones to speak up. No one laughed. And I liked that. The first days in my new role were not easy. I received dozens of emails from the old departments, the ones that had taken advantage of system loopholes to approve creative budgets. One product director even sent me a personal email. Andrew, we used to work well together. You don't have to be so rigid. Be a little more flexible. Everyone will be happier. I forwarded that email straight to Richard and the legal department. A week later, he was suspended. I wasn't going to let anyone think I was playing power games. I was rebuilding the ethics of technology for the whole system. Andrea, as usual, was the only one who understood when I needed to stay silent. The nights I came home late, she just poured wine, turned on the kitchen light, and sat beside me, asking no questions, offering no complaints. One evening, she asked, "Do you feel fulfilled yet?" I looked out at the backyard, the same place where, 6 months ago, I had sat silently with a cardboard box of personal belongings after being fired. I took a sip of wine, then answered, "Not fulfilled. It's the right person, the right time. And I'm no longer angry, I just want everything to be put in the right place." She smiled. "So, you've won?" "No," I shook my head. "Justice has won." In the 3rd month, North Bay started to recover. The stock price increased slightly after the news of system transparency was released. 3 of the biggest investors who had hesitated to withdraw came back. The media called me the man who rebuilt North Bay from within. I didn't care. What I cared about was no one dared to cheat thinking they wouldn't get caught anymore. They also established an internal training program called the Gatekeeper, training the new generation of security engineers not only in technical skills but in professional ethics. learning to spot vulnerabilities not just in the system, but in people. Stephen taught the first class. I sat at the back, listened, and saw a part of myself in the way he conveyed everything. 6 months after my return, I stood on the 13th floor balcony, holding the quarterly security report, the Seattle skyline faintly visible in the afternoon sun. My phone buzzed. A message from Richard. Increase the security budget by 12%. The entire board has approved it. No additional documentation required. I smiled lightly. No arguments, no questions, just trust. Andrea walked into the room. Are you done? I nodded, placing the report into the secure cabinet. I'm fine today, really fine. Then let's go celebrate. Not for revenge, but because you kept your promise to fix what had been broken. I took her hand and walked out of the office, once a fortress, now the place where I rebuilt everything with my own honor. Justice isn't something you scream to demand. It's something you build. Every line of code, every principle, every uncompromising decision. And I've built it. Andrew's story is a clear proof that justice sometimes doesn't need shouting, but patience, understanding, and strength. In a world where manipulators easily rise to leadership, it is the quiet, dedicated, and upright individuals like Andrew who are the true foundation that keeps everything from collapsing. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destroying the enemy, but rebuilding everything stronger and forcing them to witness it, helpless and ashamed. What do you think of Andrew's journey and the choices he made? Would you have done anything differently in that situation? Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to follow the channel for more family life stories to come.